And I'll try and be very quick with my section of the presentation to allow for as many questions as possible. I see quite a few have come in already. And so you may see me skipping through my slides. And as David has already covered, this arrival of a dual threat for African smallholders of desert locusts and the COVID-19 pandemic threw up quite a unique challenge for development actors and governments and many others, and especially smallholder farmers, but also raised the potential for digital technologies to play a part in the response effort. The desert locust in Kenya had not been seen for 70 years. So our first priority was to make sure that farmers were rapidly informed about what these new pests were, how to respond to them, and then also to make sure that scientists like David and FAO and the community who were in charge of spraying the locusts knew where they were. And this process was made ever more complicated by COVID-19, which earlier this year really restricted movement, and also where people thought we could really deploy field teams, or FAO and the government could deploy field teams. So initially the worry was, how do we get people out there quick enough to monitor these locust swarms so that these maps could be created and the response effort could be supported? That's really where we came in with David, his team, with some technology providers, with our relationships in the government of Kenya, with FAO, to see if we could deploy digital technologies where information was not flowing from rural communities, and to open that up. Now, I must caveat this and say that field teams with FAO and the government have been deployed since, and effective efforts were deployed. Very good eLocust 3M surveying system with Plant Village, with their dream team, was able to move around in the end. But initially, our worry was it was not going to be possible. And so we thought, how can we deploy digital technologies, WhatsApp for business, SMS, call center support, to build kind of almost a citizen reporting army of smallholder farmers, so they were able to report the information. We had, which is something we'll discuss at the end of this during Q&A, we had a lot of concern in the initial stages about data sharing, and you'll see this come up with digital technology responses to any sort of fast-moving issue, or even day-to-day agricultural issues. Data sharing is a critical component of the solution. And so we ensured with FAO, with David, that the data would remain in a secure data area within Kenya, and then also be fed into the same system in eLocust 3M within the same database as FAO and the government of Kenya, so that everyone had transparent access to farmer data reports alongside their extension reports as well. So just to briefly discuss the technology that we deployed with everyone, we sort of ended up taking a dual response, as well as a kind of a mass media and all technology under one roof kind of approach. We had TV and SMS messaging campaigns from Media and Shamba Shape Up. As David said, they were key and critical partners in this. We had WhatsApp for business, which I'll show you in a moment. We had radio campaigns in Ethiopia across 5 different regions in 5 different languages. And all of this was broadcasting new information about desert locusts, as well as basic practices for COVID-19 prevention in farming communities. And this is how we ended up reaching such a large number of farmers, 14 million farmers. But also this was to serve as a call to action for farmers to report via the various channels made available to them on their mobile phones, sightings of locusts, to inform the effort. So the public information campaign through TV, through media, had a really critical purpose in the call to action, not just informing the general public about what these new, swarms of upwards of 20 million locusts were. They're very scary when you first see them. So, most people will just want to know what are they going to do to my crop? And then how do you respond? And so the TV campaign by Media was critical in this process, but also provided a farmer feedback loop. So the maps that David was preparing as a result of the eLocust 3M data, and his teams were fed back into the TV shows, to Shamba Shape Up, back onto the WhatsApp platform, and in Ethiopia, back onto TV and radio advertisements about almost like a weekly weather report. This is where locusts are today. This is where we think they're going to be. This is the highest density of locusts. And if you're in this area, please report if you see them. This is just a quick 2 screenshots of the Kenya channels, the Shamba Shape Up hotline hosted by iShamba and Media. The WhatsApp for Business platform enables thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people to use one phone number to access a menu of information about desert locusts, about the do's and the don'ts, but also an ability to report desert locust sightings, and the ability on WhatsApp to drop a pin location, which is critical for GPS and mapping, and then a photo to help verify that that is indeed a locust and on what stage of maturity it was. On SMS through the iShamba platform, very similar, but in this case just text-based. Many farmers don't have smartphones, so we with iShamba made sure that there was a short code so that those with feature phones could SMS this information. And again, all of this information was going into the same database through David's team with the extension agent data, so a lot of cross-referencing was allowed to happen. Now on WhatsApp, if you're interested in technology, one of the great things that David's team is working on is building in AI integration with WhatsApp. And what does that mean? It means that once these pictures come in and the locations come in, the machine learning system within Plant Village can get much smarter about automatically recognizing what a locust is and where it is, and feeding that into the database. That's critical, because if we expand this out to bigger pests and disease outbreaks where you may have hundreds of thousands of reports of pests in different locations in different countries, no one organization has enough humans to just sift through all of those pictures and reports. And so it's important that during this process, we built out that functionality. Why WhatsApp quickly? I mean, the smartphone application 3 Locust 3M is great, but you need to be trained on it and you need to have access to it. Everyone who has a smartphone almost may have Telegram, they may have WhatsApp, but I think it's important, if we're building citizen reporting channels, to use channels widely available to farming communities. That's not to say that the eLocust 3M app is not useful. It is actually better for verification of sightings of locusts, but it isn't as widely as available amongst communities as channels exist with them. We also provided this hotline in combination with the Agricultural Transformation Agency of Ethiopia, the key agency dedicated to innovation and technology within the Ministry of Agriculture in Ethiopia. They hosted their own line and have actually been surveying their digital advisors in rural areas through SMS, IVR, and WhatsApp survey platforms. They're getting thousands of sighting reports weekly, which is incredibly valuable for the ministry and the FAO and David's team to be able to target eLocust 3M teams to the right areas. As you probably know, Ethiopia is a very large country. So having that ability to narrow down where to target the response was very important. Now I'm going to go to key learnings and then I'm going to get into Q&A, because I realize that we're running low on time and there are lots of great questions coming in. But I just want to say a few things about these digital channels for citizen reporting amongst farming communities. Some of our experiences in this is that there is no wrong digital channel. We've got to play with everything in this context. Anything that could be available to farmers, it's important that we put public information on those channels, such as what is COVID-19, what is a locust, so that they're rapidly informed in these fast-moving emergencies. Citizen reporting channels like WhatsApp and SMS, they're only really as good as the response or the feedback to the farmers. You can imagine if you're a farmer and you text, "I've seen a locust," you might want to see a text or a map or something that comes back to you and say, "Thank you for your report, and this is what we've done with your data." And I think the incentives for farmers to share information need to be front and center when deploying citizen reporting efforts in the future. We're still very much in the early days of using digital technology for this sort of scenario. So many more use cases need to be deployed, especially around other pests and diseases and climate-induced emergencies. Data sharing system setups from the beginning were critical, as I mentioned before. Daily information sharing between the different partners, especially government and non-governmental actors, and having all of those standards in place and protocols in place from the beginning was essential. And then just a last thought, farming communities really are on the front line of climate change. There are many emergencies this year, even with the La Nina drought and other pests like fall armyworm last year and this year being a real issue. And we really do need to deploy as many of these technologies as possible.